So here's another story I have that is a little funny, but mostly kind of sad, to be honest. This is a story about Russian bomb dogs. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking, how bad could it be, Andrew? Fucking awful. Absolutely fucking awful. So, back in World War II, the Russians, other countries too, but we're going to focus on Russia, created a program to strap bombs on dogs to destroy tanks. So back in the 1930s, the Russians got some dogs, mostly German Shepherds, but other dogs too. And their job was to run towards a tank, drop a bomb basically, and then run back. This bomb would either be on a timer or remotely detonated, and then it blows up. Training, though, wasn't so great, wasn't fantastic. So the Russians didn't really have dog trainers, but they used like hunters, police, and they even used circus trainers. But the dogs had difficulties dropping bombs under tanks, which was a whole mechanism they couldn't really figure out. So in the Russians' infinite wisdom, they decided to do something much worse and basically create suicide dogs. So the dogs could run up to a single target, but sometimes if they moved the target or the target was moving, the dogs would get confused and then they would run back to their trainers. Luckily, the bombs weren't live because if they were, they would blow themselves and everybody up. Foreshadowing, though, they trained the dogs using Russian tanks and sometimes captured German World War II tanks that they would pull on a tractor. So the first wave of bomb dogs put into the war, there was 30 dogs and 40 trainers. But in action, some major flaws came up. Obvious flaws, but they came up, right? For starters, tanks in the battlefield actually firing their machine guns and big fucking guns are absolutely fucking terrifying. Now imagine you're a soldier, you're already shitting yourself, but if a dog sees a massive firing gun aiming towards you, they're scared shitless, right? So the dogs were trained to jump under the tanks, but most of the time they were like, fuck that. So they'd run back to their trainer's foxhole, scared shitless, and they would jump into the foxhole and accidentally blow everyone the fuck up. But then sadly, some of them who were running back because they were scared shitless would just get shot at by their own trainers because they didn't want to get blown the fuck up. So some of the dogs, though, that didn't run away, some of them waited for the tanks to stop, which never happened. So the Germans just, which fucking sucks. But then some of them actually were successful in blowing up. They didn't really blow up under the tank, though. They blew up like next to it and caused some damage. But out of the 30 dogs there were, only 4 of them did any damage to tanks. In the first wave, of course. But that's not all. No, you silly goose. That's not all. So you remember earlier when I talked about how they had Russian tanks for training and destroyed German tanks? They would move on tractors. Well, the thing about Russian machinery is that it ran on diesel. German tanks ran on gasoline, which, if you didn't know, smell completely different, especially for a dog. So some of these dogs would run after their own tanks. They would start running towards Soviet tanks, not Germans. They would ignore the German tanks and run straight towards Soviet tanks. So as you can tell, this was a god-awful idea, god-awful program. Everything about it sucked. Some Russians reported like 300 tanks took damage due to these dogs. Probably bullshit propaganda, like 99.999999999% bullshit propaganda, right? I think the real number that I saw was like a dozen or so tanks actually took damage, and some of them weren't even destroyed. They just had a little boop. So yeah, today you have learned that dogs should be loved and not blown the fuck up. Thanks for watching.